I don't look at a script every day. I don't need to for cold calling, but it definitely write it out. But just rewriting it ingrains it in your head, and then you get to a different level when whether you're talking about due diligence at a first meeting, a final proposal, whatever it is, write it out.
I am locked out of my office, so I can't actually get to the laptop. I am recording from my phone in the truck. Topic for the day. I do not know what the title will be, but you had expressed to me an inbound DM or call with a guy basically saying, hey, I'm having a hard time getting them to sign the AOR. So do you want to dive into that?
I'll read what he wrote, and then let's break it down and what I think he can improve. I'm not going to say his name, but thanks for messaging in. So he's like, okay, lots of pushback on BORs when they want to work with me, but are scared to sign. Okay, so we got some fear going on there in the client's mind. Can you critique my blurb? All right, so here's what his blurb is, not mine, but this is what he says. Signing a BOR doesn't mean you're locked into big changes or committed no matter what. What it really does is let you choose who you want representing you in the marketplace. So lets you choose. All right. At worst, the new broker, ideally someone you trust and feel good working with, keeps things as they are. But in many cases, there's room to make improvements, whether it's better coverage, fixing gaps, or finding more competitive pricing. Okay, so he's kind of saying worst case scenario, you're going to be where you're at. Best, you improve. All right. I totally understand why people might hesitate, but more and more brokers are moving toward this approach because, unfortunately, without it, the current agent can block access to certain carriers or suddenly fix issues that never were addressed before just to stay in the picture. It puts the new agent in a tough spot and slows down the process. Okay, so brokers are moving to this. And then he ends with, the reality is it takes a lot of time and effort to review, quote, and rework policies properly. Doing all that without knowing if the client even wants to move forward together can make it tough for both sides. Some brokers even charge for reviews up front and waive the fee later if it leads to a working relationship. But the goal is always the same, making sure you're working with someone who's truly looking out for you and that there's mutual trust in the process. The end. I want to make a couple, I did a solo video on this too, guys. So that'll come out this week as well. It's probably 10, 15 minutes, but it's kind of breaks this down as well. But this podcast, I think we'll go into more detail on it and expand a little further. I think the beginning part is fine. And I'll break that down, but I want to start at the end because that's what we just got done reading. Where you go wrong, we'll call him Brian, is that he starts to make it about brokers choosing this approach, right? Hey, brokers are moving this way because it's causing issues, blocked markets. It makes it tough for me to do my job. That's not saying that's wrong, but put yourself in the buyer's shoes for a second, and it's got to be about them. Because you might get a lot of clients who are like, okay, who cares? If they've quoted their whole life, like, why should I care? Tough luck.
Why do I get two shits what's convenient for the broker?
Yeah, I've done this for 20 years. I've had other agents quote, so I'll find someone else who will, right? So, or they're just thinking like, nah, I mean, come on, man, that's just part of the job. I got a bit, so you don't want to make it about you and brokers and that. And even if that's true, just don't go that route. And then at the end, where you kind of say it takes a lot of time and effort to quote. Well, yeah, of course. So it's again, like the clients know that, and it's fine to be. You don't want to be like a pushover. So you want to say, hey, man, it's a lot. I get the whole concept of like, hey, I'm trying to respect. I want you to respect my time, or I want to be respectful of both of our times, right? I don't want to waste our time, of course. So that part I'm with you, but this is, and I said this in the solo video I did it. To me, it's less about like brokers are going this way, and instead business owners are moving this way. Business owners. Correct. Other contractors are doing this because it gives them more control, which Brian, you talked about in the beginning, so good for you there, but it gives you more control. It helps you, and that control helps you ensure the best results in the market. Of course, there's exceptions, right? But because of how the game works, you don't want the carriers deciding who you're ultimately going to go with. And buyers are just getting fed up with the blocking of markets and the games and going back and forth between agents. And they're just saying, I'm just going to pick the agent that I trust based on who's going to give me the most bang for my commission, right? The most value. They're going that route, just like you would with a real estate agent, right? You could technically use two real estate agents, but you don't. or a pro athlete, right? And that's where I get into the analogy piece of it. So, I think my main message to Brian here is like, I think everything he said is fine. You want to get so good with you want to get so confident with how you talk about this that when a prospect and you are having a conversation, it just flows so natural too. So like, great to have your blurb written out here because I get he's trying to get some feedback on it. But I would just encourage you to get really good at that as well. Like just know the main points you want to hit on. And for me, it always comes back to, I think it's best for you, the buyer, because it gives you the most control. You can quote, and here's the thing where I differ from a lot of BOR only people is like, I would say to a buyer, you can quote and you still can get good results. That's fine. But there's I think this is a more effective way to do it, and it makes more sense because of how the game works. That's the biggest shift I would say to this message here. Just make it all about them. What's in it for them? I think he did a good job opening up to. He said, at worst, the new broker keeps things as they are. But in many cases, there's room to make improvements. So like, that's a nice thing I like to say too, is like, hey, worst case scenario, man, like if I come out here and I don't deliver upon what I say I think I can deliver upon and you're totally unimpressed, you can always fire me and go back to your agent. I think they'll gladly take you back, So I like to add that in there to folks as well. In his opening, he talks about signing a BOR doesn't mean you're locked into big changes or committed no matter what. I don't know. That's kind of little weak. You know what I mean? I like to be more direct. Like, hey, this letter will fire your agent. And I know some people don't like that language, but you can say whatever. This letter will replace your agent. It'll hire me. I'll take over the marketing going forward. But don't be wishy-washy on it because it is a serious change. You don't want them to think they can just, you don't want them to think like, oh, I'm just signing this letter to get quotes or something like that. No, this letter changes who has access to the carriers and it fires your agent. So that's kind of what I would say around that.
I think there's no way. I don't think there's any perfect talk track. And at least this is in my experience. I don't think there's any perfect talk track that's going to overcome every insured's objection about signing a BOR. So you can try to like make it as perfect and as tight and concise as you want. And there's nothing wrong with trying to do that and get better, in my opinion. But I think there's just some people who are just never going to cross that bridge.
Yep.
And, that's where the fallback position of being able to quote makes sense as long as you get your markets. But, I've had 2 different deals this year that have fallen apart. And they were both were even verbals on the BOR. But when it came down to actually putting pen to pad, it just didn't pan out. They just couldn't cross that chasm. And It is what it is, man. As we've said a million times, I think ultimately the biggest rate limiting step isn't how good you are at getting people to sign BORs or how great you are at coverage or all this stuff. I mean, like the rate limiting step on everything is like, will you pick up the phone? Can you keep getting at bats? Because that will ultimately cover up all of your sins as far as like how good you are with it getting things signed or how persuasive or how coverage. If you get enough at bats, you can overcome people not signing BORs.
I second that. It's interesting. My Lucia, my daughter, she's 4 and she had a little dance recital this weekend. And, there was at this dance studio, there's 4-year-olds all the way up to high schoolers, right? And they all do their routines. It's about an hour long. But like the older girls would have several routines, right? The younger ones just had the one. But it was interesting. Like my wife and I were sitting there watching. There'd be like 5 to 10% of the girls who just stood out, right? They had like the facial expressions and like they looked like naturals. Versus some girls were okay kind of technically, but they just didn't have like that whole like they had that expression to their face and like all that stuff. And then some girls are just like totally lost, right? So I was like thinking like, man, like sales, like whether you're cold calling or you're talking about the BOR or you're explaining the insurance game or you're trying to fall back into due diligence, whatever the like topic is, you want to kind of be like those dancers who like know it so freaking well because they practice to know the routine so well that then now they can move to the next level, which is like the facial expressions and having fun with it. And then all of a sudden in the audience, like, wow, this girl is killing it. You know what I mean? Like she looks like a natural because she did all that work to like know everything that she can take it to the next level. And then, translating over to sales, like someone asks you about like BORs, why they're the best, or how does insurance work? Like you can just go out there and it just comes naturally. And the buyer's like, damn, this person genuinely knows this stuff, right? Or they generally know the market. They generally know how insurance works. They genuinely know whatever the topic may be. Or if you're cold calling, you like, wow, this guy sounds like He sounds like me. He sounds like, if a CEO is talking to him, like, this guy sounds legit. Like, you must really know your stuff. You must specialize in excavating contractors, right? Like, because what you say and it's how you say it comes off like so well. So that's my thing to everybody here is like, kudos to Brian here for even typing this out. I think that's actually step one that we don't even think about. And that was one of the things when I actually wrote my book. And then I wrote a presentation, a PowerPoint, and then I wrote the book. And then before that, I was a bunch of LinkedIn posts. And that's where we always say, like, writing stuff out can really help you in real life when you're talking it out, right, in front of people. And so, like, I don't look at a script every day. I don't need to for cold calling, but it definitely write it out. And there's times I've gone back and reworked it and typed it, but I'm not sitting there reading it. But just rewriting it ingrains it in your head, and then you get to a different level whether you're talking about due diligence at a first meeting, a final proposal, whatever it is. Write it out.
Catch us up on your year so far. We've just, gotten out of. Well, I mean, we've been out of Q1 for a while, but we're meet a Q2 here. How's your year shaping up?
Good, man. Good now after the last month, but yeah, I think revenue wise, I'm sitting about 145, 150. I don't even know. I have to go look at it, but so pretty solid. I mean, I got another 50K that I feel really solid about in the next 30 days as well. So 200. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think I should be at 250 if I have a couple of big pops in August and September that I'm kind of talking to. Could be 300, 350. But
nice. Yeah,
I mean, and you never know. I mean, that's the cool thing about calling. It's like all of a sudden you like just stuff pops up out of nowhere. But I had a long drought, man. Pretty much June to first part of April, nothing, nada.
June, so, April.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry, January.
That's not a mine. That's not a drought, son. That's more than a drought. What how's your golf herpes?
Oh, it's No, I still haven't played. I'm going to play next week, I think. I have to go to home office, Minnesota this week for a couple days, so I'm kind of out. So I think next week I'm going to definitely play, but I went to the range, so was hitting the ball well. Was next to a 72-year-old guy who he's giving putting tips to pros apparently, and
that guy.
But he was a nice guy, but he just couldn't get over my stance. He just couldn't. He couldn't. It was like breaking his head. He's like, I don't know how. Wow, but the ball, I was hitting him solid. So he's sitting there. He's like, yeah, you got a lot of right to left movement on there. I'm like, not really. I mean, I can hit it a straight one. I'm like, no, it just depends, And then he's like, how do you hit it low? I'm like, well, I move the ball back a little bit, All
you're doing is just an exaggerated draw stance. It's just a really close stance coming from the inside. It's not that crazy.
Yeah. So, no, but that's my update. How's your year been, man?
Dragging along. I'm probably about a third of where you are. Trucking along, probably 20, 30-ish on the books. A little more than that. And then, on pace to do 100, 120.
That's a solid year. It's not bad.
I just, I don't know. I hit these lulls where I stop. I just don't make my calls or I don't fit them in and shit just fucking slows down.
How do you think that, so how do producers solve that problem in terms of not hitting the lulls? Because I hit a lull, my numbers, dude, I've kept daily numbers for 4 months now straight. And January, February, I was never missing 40 a day. And then also it was March, probably averaging about 30 a day. And then April was 20, 25 a day because I had to go to Houston a lot.
That's because your activity picks up. It's that's exactly what mine is. I was prospecting, I was hitting 40 every day, January, February. And then it provides you a certain amount of deals or a certain amount of at-bats. And I also have probably 4 renewals that are end of April, middle of May. Yep. And so it's then you have all these renewals and for me, man, it's just cyclical, and I don't know how to. I mean, I know what the fix is. The fix is even when you're in the middle of that, you still find a way to get your 40. Yeah. I just think that's easier said than done. And I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm not as disciplined as you are at all, and that's just something I've got to work on. I mean, if you go back and listen to from our stuff from the beginning, you are way more consistent, and I am way more sporadic and way more. What would the word be? I'm just less consistent. And that's why, I do 70 to 120 a year and you do 300 to 500 a year. I literally do a third of what you do.
But don't you think you can get more consistent on that?
Oh, 100. That's what I'm saying. I should be way more consistent. I'm not saying it is 100% within my control. 100%. I think when we set off beginning of the year, you gave me the goal of writing 200 for the year. And so I definitely think I can get there 100%. I just got to pick up the pace, hit my shit. We can get there.
Yeah, no, I know you can for sure. Yeah, it's just I'm trying to go through my numbers right now and add up what my month of April, dude, was so down from a prospecting side of things. Yeah, dude. So listen to these numbers. So January I had 868 calls made and 109 conversations. February 712 calls, 91 conversations. This is just funny how the numbers work. You can predict them. March 512 conversations. Or 512 calls, 65 conversations. So about literally not quite half of where I was in January. And then April, 447 calls, 61 conversations. So actually that was about similar. Yeah. It was only 60 less calls in March. So that's about right. But it's just funny. It really is kind of a numbers game when it comes down to certain, you got to have you got to have the conversations, right? That's the key.
List prep's a really big deal for me too. If my list isn't prepped, like scrubbed, I find that if I only have 2 hours to get my calls done, I'll only get 25 done, not 40. And there are days when you only have an hour and a half, 2 hours to make your calls. And, I don't have the same data that you have in X date. So I have to kind of go back and forth between that and a Dun and Bradstreet list. And if my shit isn't like tightened up, so what I've actually, tell me what your thought is on this. I've actually moved things around a little bit. I've actually moved my prospecting window to after lunch. So come in the beginning, emails, whatever, get stuff done, guys in the office, whatever, working deals, renewals, and then list prep. And then that way there's no excuses when you come back from lunch for that 1:30 to 3 or 1:30 to 4 call. Your list should be prepped. You've got all your shit done, like follow up. What are your thoughts on moving the call block to the afternoon like that?
I'm not a huge, you have to do it early in the morning guy. There's value in getting some momentum going for the day for sure. Cause I'm more of right now, pretty much like a 10 o'clock to 11:30 and then 2 o'clock to 3:30 or 4. It's kind of like my 2 blocks lately. I would just say, this is the other thing. If you get so religious with when you have to make your calls and then you start getting deal flow in and meetings popping up and renewals, then it's going to be really I missed my morning, I'm screwed. No, I think the way to stay consistent is you got to be flexible and you got to okay, this day
flexible but disciplined to get it done.
Yeah, this day presents the hours between 8 and 9:30 to make calls and 3 to 4. So now in your head, I got to maximize those 2 time slots, right? And so that's why I don't like the whole I'm going to put a block on my calendar so nothing's messed with for a solid year, because that sounds good in theory, but the problem in real life is that we know how this goes. Insurance renewals, you got new business deals, you got internal meetings, you got other stuff, and then it just doesn't work.
Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Check out the YouTube channel. We're really pumping the content out there. Subscribe to it too if you like it. That just helps us. And that's it. I don't really have anything else.
Yeah, we have a weekly newsletter that now goes out every Monday afternoon, Monday evening. And I would say it's the best damn newsletter in the industry for producers, probably one of only 2 or 3. So it's not that hard to be the best. And then we also have the Producer Playbook, which is a step-by-step guide to building a book of business from scratch with cold outbound. So if you're not being seated business and you're out there in the trenches and you're having to do it by yourself on your own with little to no help, and you need to figure out how to knock on doors and get at bats, this is how to do it. It's actually, Micah taught it to me, and it's actually how he's built 2 7-figure books of business independently in about 10 years. So I would go look into it. All the links in the show notes. We appreciate you listening, and we will catch you next episode.
Adios, y'all.